leaders who are not Christians, who are very carnal, who are very rebellious type of individuals, kind of arrogant, you know, let's get bloody, let's... In fact, they made a song today. I couldn't believe it. It was on the Glenn Beck's program, but the SEIU, I think they call it, made a song, and it said, stomp on your boss, you know, you're not going to listen to your boss, you're going to overpower your boss. Where did this come from? I mean, that's rebellion. And a rebellious spirit releases demonic powers. So that's the bottom line. Wow. So that's a little bit of what I wanted to say. And Pam, greet the folks. I know everybody's saying, let Pam talk right now. That's what they're telling me, I'm sure.
Let Pam talk. Let Pam talk.
They like to hear your accent. So say something in Alabama. Alabamian.
Hello, all of you Alabamians. How are you doing?
Now, you've got, most of you know that you can type up a question. I am the world's worst mark in answering questions because I do it like a lawyer in a court case. I start with A, B, C, D, E. I never get through. Let's try to take a few and let's just see. Do you have a central theme there?
Oh yeah, you know what the central theme is today.
The what now? The
central
theme.
The central theme
there you go.
Today.
What is it?
Egypt.
Yeah, I figure it would be.
What is going on in Egypt? And this was the best question. Let me see. Give us your thoughts on what is happening in Egypt, how it ties to Bible prophecy, and the implications if the Muslim Brotherhood takes leadership.
All right. The reason, and I know a lot of people will go to our website during times like this and they'll want me to post something. I want to explain to you there's two things. Number one, I'm very careful about trying to get a comment before you see the fullness of what's happening. Mm-hmm. In other words, a lot of times, and most of you know, one of my emphasis has always been the prophetic teaching. We teach a lot of other things beside that, Mark. Mark knows this. In fact, I preached Jensen Franklin a 5-week revival one time and preached prophecy one night in 5 weeks. So in a normal revival, I preach evangelistic. However, I have learned that some men immediately jump on the issue and they start making all kinds of predictions about what's going to happen. The reason I have not given a lot of comment is twofold. Number one is because of the fact of not seeing where it's totally going at this point, because it can go two different directions. And number two, which is important, probably not for you who are watching the webcast, but for me personally, is in a few weeks, in fact, Beaumont, Texas, Hot Springs, Arkansas, and then our major prophetic summit that's in Cleveland, Tennessee, I'm going to deal with different messages about Egypt and about the Antichrist. So the reason I don't really get into it on the webcast, and I know people fuss at me. I got a letter from a lady that was just, I think if she could cuss me out, she would, because she got mad at me of saying, why don't you just come on and share, share, share? You have to understand that I want the full information first. I want to do my research proper first before I start getting on a website saying, yeah, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. Now, I want the young people to open their Bible to Daniel chapter 11. And I just completed, now what we're going to do, we're going to talk for just a few moments about Egypt. What I'm going to do is give you why it's happening, okay? I'm going to save the details for some of the other meetings later, because we have got too much to cover to just stay on Egypt tonight. But I'm going to give you something here. I just finished the commentary on the book of Daniel. It was 41 pages for my study Bible. And someone asked, you know, when's the study Bible going to be ready? Honest to goodness, I have no clue. I can tell you 3 to 4 years. It's going to take longer than I thought, because you know, when you're studying for other messages and internet articles and you're preaching, you just don't have time to. I told Pam I need to take a year off and just work on the Bible, but I can't take a year off. You know, our ministry would cease to function after a year if we weren't traveling and doing what we're doing for the Lord, and we wouldn't be reaching the number of people if I took off for a year. That's the most important part. When I did studied the book of Daniel, I came to chapter 11, and this was about the time the Egyptian thing was taking place. When I saw what happened in Egypt and I saw how they forced Mubarak to step down, I predicted to members of my staff, I said, Libya will be next. It has to be next. I says, now, Libya is only next if we are really, really in the time of the end. If we are really in the last days, and this is not some just freak event, watch Libya. Well, I'm telling you, Libya at the time I'm speaking to you is in absolute chaos right now. And if Gaddafi shows up at the wrong place, he will be assassinated. I'm not saying the Lord told me he'd be assassinated, but I do not see him taking the country back, because the country is divided into two main tribes. He's part of one tribe, and the other part is a part of the other tribe, and it just so happened that part of the fuel is owned by the other tribe, all right? So Gaddafi has said, what I want to do, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to, in fact, let me just share with you about Libya that there's a couple things that the U.S. intelligence is looking at right now they're very afraid of. And concerned is a better word. Number one, Gaddafi could give a signal if he knows he's going to die, if he knows he's out, to blow up the pipelines, which would take months and months and months to repair. Now, we only get a certain percentage of oil from Libya. In fact, for years we didn't. We only opened it up a while back. For years we got no oil from Libya. So it may not affect us as much, but there are countries that depend on that oil overseas. Yeah. So they got to get their oil from somewhere else is the point. Number two, when George, the press never brings this out about the good President Bush did. This is one of those things. When President Bush went into Iraq and Saddam was captured, Libya gave up all of their weapons of mass destruction. Do you know where they're stored right now? Oak Ridge, Tennessee, in a bunker. They brought all of his stuff, and there was all kinds of different things, and I won't go into what was there, and they shipped it in, they brought it over here, and now unless they've moved it, they may have moved it, it's in storage in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Because Oak Ridge is, you know, we live in Tennessee, we know about Oak Ridge and big bomb boy, you know, that's what I call it, the bomb, the nuclear bomb and nuclear development. Now, he has 1,000 tons, I believe, 1,000 pounds. I've got the letter here. Maybe I should just read the information. But Gaddafi has a huge amount of yellow cake. Yellow cake, of course, you'd have to enrich it and do some things to it for it to be effective, to be used as a nuclear weapon. They do believe, however, it is possible that he still has some of his chemical or biological type weapons. U.S. fears Tripoli may deploy gas as chaos mounts. And the concern is that he has Scud missile stockpiles, and he could put a biological or chemical weapon. Now, he gave a lot of it up because he was afraid Bush was coming after him. When Reagan, some of you were kids back then, but when Reagan bombed him, you remember that because of the Pan Am flight, Reagan bombed him? Never heard from the guy again. I mean, literally, you never heard from him. But the fear is that he will use chemical, biological weapons, or he'll blow up the oil fields if he knows he's going out, and that could happen. That's yet to be seen. Now, let me go back and read. This is significant. When I was doing the study in Daniel, see how long it takes to answer one question? Hopefully, though, I'm going to answer a lot of them in what I'm going to say. That's the point. In Daniel 11, there is a man called Antiochus Epiphanes who is he's an exact prototype of the Antichrist. Everything you see of him, the Antichrist will do. And the book of Daniel spends quite a bit of time in Daniel 11 dealing with him. It is believed that the prophecies of Antiochus Epiphanes starts somewhere around verse 20. And then shall stand up in his state a raiser of taxes. And it goes all the way down through here and starts describing Antiochus' war with the king of the south, which was Egypt, and how he went into Palestine and so on. And then verses 32 through 34 deals with the Maccabees. The Maccabees, they that know their God shall be strong and do exploits. In fact, the Maccabees read the book of Daniel and saw this, and it inspired them to raise up against Antiochus, who had desecrated the temple in Jerusalem by putting a pig on the altar. Now, all of a sudden, in verse 39 to verse 40, there's a transition, and it changes from Antiochus Epiphanes to the Antichrist. And remember, the book of Daniel was written in scroll form, so there was no chapter 12. So verse 45 of Daniel 11 flows directly into chapter 12, where it says there's a time of trouble, such as was not since the world began. And that, of course, is the Great Tribulation that we talk about, okay? But here's what I want to read. Now, this deals with not Antiochus Epiphanes. This deals with the Antichrist. Okay, I normally read from the 1611 version because that's what I learned to quote as a kid. You know, if I use another version, this is so funny when I'm preaching. I'm reading that other translation, but I start saying King James in the middle of it because I'm so used to quoting it. In verse 40, at the time of the end shall the king of the south. Now, the king of the south all through Daniel is Egypt. All right? And the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. Now, Egypt's going to get a king, but I want to predict something to you. Whatever leader they get right next is not the Antichrist. Because here the Antichrist is going to push at him. Watch what happens. He shall enter also into the glorious land. Now, this person that they're pushing at is going to enter into, and that's a phrase, that's a name for Israel.